And there comes a moment in every soul's journey when it is no longer enough to be chosen. One must be revered. To live as an option is to live as a shadow in someone else's story. But to be seen as a luxury, that is to become the center of gravity. Not through vanity, not through arrogance, but through the sacred power of self-definition. Luxury is not simply wealth. It is worth. It is not about being expensive, it is about being rare. A diamond does not beg to be noticed. It shines in silence, and still all eyes find it. So today, I will guide you through the first 5 of 9 transformational keys, each one forged in the fires of psychology, myth, and real-life truth, to help you stop being an option and start being a luxury. There is a deep yearning in every person, a hunger not just to exist, but to mean something. Beneath the routines of daily life, beyond the mirror of appearances, lives a self not yet fully born, waiting to be discovered and honored. This self is not made of ego or ambition, but of story, symbol, and soul. And it does not speak in the language of trends or titles, but through the quiet current of energy that flows through your presence, your gestures, your silence. This is your archetype. We are all born into myth, not the myths of textbooks, but the ones written in our bones. The lover who sees beauty where others see utility. The warrior who rises again when others collapse, the magician who transforms pain into wisdom, the sovereign who leads not by force, but by inner gravity. These are not costumes to wear, but truths to embody. And yet, most people pass through life unaware that they are living someone else's script. They borrow fragments of others' identities, adopt roles handed to them by family, society, or fear, and then wonder why they feel unseen, undervalued, or replaceable. To be seen as a luxury and not an option, you must begin here with the radical act of remembrance. You must ask yourself with unflinching honesty, who am I beneath my name? What is the essence I carry when no one is watching? When do I feel most alive, most aligned, most undeniable? This is not a question of preference. It is a question of presence. What is the energy that moves through you when your defenses fall away? That energy is your signature. That is the beginning of your archetype. Consider Eliza, a woman of quiet elegance who once blended into the background of her own profession. She was an interior designer, competent, capable, forgettable. Clients liked her work, but they didn't remember her name. She worked long hours but earned little recognition. Until one day, while wandering through a museum in Florence, she stood in front of a sculpture of Terpsichore, the muse of dance. Something ancient stirred within her, a shiver that wasn't physical, but psychic. Tears welled up, not of sadness, but of knowing. She realized she was not a decorator. She was the muse, the bringer of beauty, not simply arrangement, the one who awakens soul in space. From that day forward, she stopped marketing herself as affordable. She stopped competing with generic portfolios and beige promises. She began speaking in the language of inspiration. Her brand, her tone, her demeanor, her prices, all shifted to match the truth of her identity. She no longer sold design services. She offered a transformation of energy. Her clients changed, her income changed, but most importantly, she changed. She became someone unforgettable, not because she tried to be, but because she remembered who she had always been. This is not a story about branding. This is a story about identity. You cannot command reverence until you have located your own sacredness. People do not pay more for objects because of features. They pay more because of feeling. That feeling must start within you, and feelings are not invented. They are unearthed. But let us be honest. Claiming your archetype is not always a gentle process. It requires burning away the false selves, you have spent years constructing. It requires standing in front of the inner mirror without filters, without apologies, without the need to be liked. It demands you ask, what truth am I here to embody, even if the world misunderstands it at first? This work is not for the faint-hearted. It is a spiritual excavation, but the reward is immense. Once you know your archetype, your energy becomes specific. And in a world drowning in generalities, specificity is the new luxury. The sovereign does not need to convince others of her worth. She simply is. The magician does not explain himself. He transforms, and others feel it. The lover does not chase affection. He becomes a mirror in which others fall in love with themselves. When you embody your archetype, everything aligns. Your boundaries become clearer. Your presence becomes more magnetic. Your decisions no longer stem from anxiety, but from clarity. You no longer compete in markets saturated with options, because you are no longer an option. You are a category of one. But be warned. Others will try to resist your transformation. They will say you have changed, that you are too much, too different, too intense. Let them. These are the voices of the world trying to pull you back into smallness. Do not shrink to soothe their discomfort. You were not born to fit in. You were born to reveal something rare, something they didn't know they needed until you showed them. So study yourself as you would study a sacred text. Observe the patterns that have repeated in your life, the moments you've come alive, the symbols that keep appearing. Are you always drawn to healing others' pain? You may be the healer. Do you turn chaos into beauty? Perhaps you are the alchemist. Do people feel calmer just by being around you? The sage may be waiting for your full expression. Once you have named your archetype, build your external world around it. Let your style, your space, your language, your offerings all mirror that deep truth. Because people do not fall in love with utility, they fall in love with identity. Not everyone will resonate with your archetype, but those who do will feel like they have found a missing part of themselves in you, and they will not be able to look away. Luxury is not about what you wear, drive, or display. It is about how deeply you know yourself, and how unapologetically you express that knowing. When you live from the core of your archetype, you become irreplaceable, because the soul you embody cannot be duplicated. In a world addicted to noise, a person rooted in their essence is a thunderclap. They do not need to speak loudly. The silence of their presence says enough. So begin now. Go inward, remember, reclaim, embody. Because the first step to being seen as a luxury is not in changing how others see you. It is in remembering who you truly are and refusing to be anything less. There is a quiet law woven into the human psyche, older than civilization and more enduring than logic. We desire what withdraws from us, not out of cruelty, but because absence creates longing, and longing gives birth to reverence. When something or someone is always available, always accommodating, always present on demand, it ceases to command attention. Its presence begins to feel ordinary, predictable, even burdensome. But when space is introduced, when access is measured, intentional and sacred, then fascination emerges. Then the soul begins to lean forward, yearning for what it cannot fully grasp. The great paradox is that while we crave connection, we also instinctively value distance. There is something deeply encoded in our nature that tells us what is difficult to reach must be valuable. This is not superficial. It is not a marketing trick. It is spiritual architecture. The things that most deeply move us often come wrapped in mystery. The moon suspended high above, the locked gallery of a master painter, the unopened letter from a loved one, the presence of a person who knows their worth so completely that they do not chase, only choose. To be seen as a luxury, one must learn the subtle art of psychological distance. This is not aloofness nor arrogance. It is the creation of sacred space, a psychic boundary around the self that says, I am not for everyone, and I do not belong to all. This is not about withholding love, but about withdrawing from performance. It is about refusing to offer your energy in exchange for mere attention, because attention is cheap, but true presence offered intentionally is rare, and rarity is the birthplace of awe. The need to always be available, to respond instantly, to fix, to please, to accommodate. This is not generosity. It is fear wearing the mask of kindness. The fear that if we are not there, we will be forgotten. That if we do not please, we will not be chosen. But such patterns only deepen the very wound they seek to heal. When you give yourself away too freely, you teach others to value you casually, and what is casual is never revered. Think of a rare perfume placed behind a locked glass case. You cannot touch it, you cannot sample it easily. It sits quietly, waiting, not begging to be chosen, but allowing itself to be discovered. And because you cannot access it freely, your mind begins to wonder. What does it smell like? What makes it special? Is it worth the price? You begin to imagine its story, its essence, its power. This is the scarcity principle in motion. Not manipulation, but the invocation of desire through intentional absence. A study conducted at Stanford in 2007 revealed something remarkable. When participants were given the same bottle of wine but told that one was rare and the other common, they rated the rare one as significantly better, even though it was the same wine. The perception of value changed the experience. In essence, the story we are told about a thing becomes the lens through which we experience it. This principle applies to people too. When you guard your energy, when you move with discernment, when you are not always accessible, you shape the story others tell themselves about you. And they begin to see you as something worth waiting for, worth pursuing, worth holding with care. But creating distance is not just about others. It is also about self-respect. It is about choosing to exist in your own rhythm, rather than being pulled by the urgency of others' needs or desires. It is about giving yourself the dignity of time and space, and allowing those who seek your presence to enter with intention, not assumption. You do not need to explain your silence. You do not need to justify your boundaries. You only need to honor them. For every moment you choose yourself over performance, you remind your psyche that you are not here to be consumed, you are here to be experienced. Mystery is not something to be feared, it is a form of power. When others cannot predict your every move, when your time is not on tap, when your emotions are not always on display, they must learn to approach you with respect. They must slow down. Pay attention, listen. This is the velvet rope of the psyche, the invisible boundary that signals, this is not ordinary. And we know, without being told, that to cross it requires reverence. This is not to suggest you become cold or distant. True psychological distance is not about disconnection. It is about depth. It is the difference between shallow waters that anyone can wade through, and a deep, still lake that one must approach with care. When you create space around your presence, you invite others to meet you with greater consciousness. You teach them not to take you for granted, not because you punish them, but because you honor yourself. And yet, in a culture that glorifies availability, instant replies, open calendars, emotional exposure, this can feel radical. It can feel selfish. It can feel lonely. But there is a sacredness in solitude that cannot be found in constant connection. When you step back, you begin to hear yourself again. You begin to feel the difference between authentic desire and reactive obligation. You begin to notice who reaches out when you are no longer performing, who waits, who wonders, who sees you not as a resource, but as a rare encounter. Let your absence speak. Let the silence between words become part of the music. Let your time be an offering, not a default. When you stop chasing, you start choosing. And what you choose reflects what you believe you are worth. So the next time you feel the urge to fill every gap with words, every space with presence, every silence with reassurance, pause. Ask yourself, is this an act of love or an attempt to prove I am enough? And then, if you dare, retreat, not in anger, but in reverence. Let them miss you, let them wonder, let them feel the weight of your absence, and in that space, allow the slow burn of longing to replace the fleeting high of attention. Because those who are always seen are rarely remembered, but those who dare to disappear, strategically, consciously, sacredly, become unforgettable. There is a quiet truth that lives beneath the surface of what we see, buy, and touch. Luxury is never truly about price, it is about presence. It is not the handbag that costs thousands, nor the marble floor of a grand lobby, nor the private jet gliding above the clouds. These are only shadows of something deeper. The essence of luxury is the feeling it evokes, the reverence, the awe, the sense that one is in the presence of something rare, something cultivated, something complete within itself. And so, when we speak of becoming a luxury, we are not speaking of ornaments or outer symbols. We are speaking of a transformation of being, a reorientation of identity from the external to the internal. True luxury begins not in what you wear, but in what you carry within you, your emotional depth, your spiritual richness, your intellectual substance. You do not need to own a palace to become one. You must build a temple of wealth within your soul, one that others enter and emerge from changed. Ask yourself, what is it like to experience you? Are you a source of nourishment or merely noise? Do your words leave an imprint on the heart, or are they forgotten before the next sentence? When someone sits in your presence, do they feel seen or simply scanned? Are you a deep well that others can draw from, or just another cup of lukewarm water in a world full of thirst? Ray, a barber from Chicago, asked himself these very questions, though he may not have put them in such terms. He had always been skilled with a blade and a comb. His fades were sharp, his lines clean. But there were hundreds of barbers in his city who could do the same. And Ray felt it, the quiet dread of being replaceable, of being one in a crowd. Until one day he began to do something different. He listened. Not passively, but deeply. He began to hold space for his clients. Men sat in his chair not just for a haircut, but for healing. They spoke of fathers, failures, fears. Ray didn't offer solutions, he offered presence. His shop became a sanctuary. Clients returned not only because of the skill of his hands, but because of the richness of his energy. They told their friends, they booked months in advance, and Ray's prices rose, not because he demanded more, but because what he offered became rare. He had become emotionally expensive, not in the sense of being difficult, but in the sense that experiencing him felt valuable. This is the quiet key to becoming a luxury. Cultivate your inner riches until your presence becomes an experience people remember, long for, and return to. Develop yourself to such a depth that others cannot help but slow down in your presence, as they would in a cathedral or a sunset. But this is not about performance. You cannot fake depth. You cannot read one book and claim wisdom. You cannot mimic presence. You must become it. And to do that, you must first commit to the inner path. Read widely, not just to impress, but to understand. Read fiction, philosophy, poetry. Let new thoughts unsettle you. Reflect on your past with tenderness and honesty. Heal the wounds that make you reactive. Soften the fears that keep you guarded. Grow not for applause, but for alignment. The path to inner wealth is quiet and long. There are no shortcuts. But every moment you choose to return to yourself rather than escape into distraction, you are depositing into your emotional bank, and eventually you will carry that richness into. People sense it. They may not name it, but they feel it. The calm steadiness in your voice, the way you hold silence without rushing to fill it, the way you offer a single word that lands with the weight of 100. This is the energy of someone who has done the work, who has sat with their own darkness and made peace with it, who does not seek to be everything to everyone, but instead offers a singular presence that is irreplaceable. And let us be clear, becoming emotionally expensive does not mean being emotionally unavailable. It means your energy is not free to those who waste it. It means your attention is not scattered, but sacred. It means that when you choose to be present, you are fully present, and when you step away, it is not with guilt, but with grace. The modern world is starving for this kind of presence. We scroll, we swipe, we skim. We trade depth for speed, substance for spectacle, and in doing so we begin to treat people like content, consumable, forgettable, replaceable. But when you choose to cultivate your inner life, you say as a quiet rebellion against that trend. You say, I will not be shallow, even if the world asks me to be. I will not offer myself cheaply. I will be rare. And rarity is what draws people in, not in the sense of playing hard to get, but in the sense of being hard to find. When someone senses that your mind is a library, your heart a sanctuary, your presence a healing balm, they will not forget you. They will compare every shallow interaction after you to the feeling of sitting with you, and they will realize, this is what I've been missing. You must become the kind of person who brings others back to themselves. Not by force, but by frequency. When someone walks away from you, they should feel more whole, more honest, more awake. That is luxury. That is the power of inner wealth. Not everyone will recognize it. Some will be intimidated. Others will not be ready. But those who are seeking realness, they will find you, and they will stay. So cultivate your inner world like it is the most sacred garden. Tend to it with patience. Remove the weeds of resentment and fear. Water it with curiosity and compassion. Feed it with silence and stillness. Let the roots grow deep, because when the world looks for something real, something rare, something it cannot scroll past or swipe away, it will look for you. And when it finds you, let it discover not a hollow shell, but a temple, rich with soul, alive with wisdom, echoing with the silence of someone who has come home to themselves. That is what it means to be emotionally expensive. That is what it means to become a luxury. Language is not merely a tool for communication. It is an architecture of meaning, a lattice upon which the soul is draped. It is the mirror through which the inner world is reflected into the outer. Every word you speak carries energy. Every sentence you form is an invocation. To understand this is to realize that words are not empty vessels, but charged instruments, capable of building bridges or burning them, of lifting perception or collapsing it into dust. If you are to be seen as a luxury, then your language must rise to meet that identity. Not in pretense, not in ornamentation, but in consciousness. There is a reason why the truly refined never shout their worth. The rarest perfumes do not chase the nose. They linger, they beckon, they arrive slowly. So too must your voice, your verbal presence, unfold not with desperation, but with discernment. The way you speak must not only carry information, but transformation. You must speak not to fill silence, but to shape it. Every syllable should serve as a subtle reminder, you are not like the rest. Observe the world of luxury, not the external shell of it, but its interior language. A luxury brand never uses words that scream. It whispers with confidence. It never over-explains. It never floods you with detail in a panic to be understood. It presumes its worth and invites the other to rise to its level. In this way, language becomes a filter